G'day guys, today I'm going to show you a really easy DIY project you can do at home to trick up your drawers a little bit. Now it only needs basic tools and it's really simple, but we're going to put an automatic light into the drawer that lights up when you open it up. Now I'm using an Adventure Kings 4-meter strip light because it comes with basically everything you need, and then I've hooked it up into our 12-volt control box so that we have a switch and fused power ready to go. Plus, I'm going to add in a momentary switch so that it lights up when you open the drawer. Another way you could do this is with some fused power directly to your battery with a separate switch, and that's super easy to do as well, so I'll show you how to do that. And then the final thing is you'll need to use or make a little bracket to actually hold the momentary switch. You could easily find something really similar to this. I've just made it up with a piece of scrap steel, a grinder, and a drill. Now the first step is we're gonna need power back to the drawers, and it's really easy with the strip light I'm using because it comes with a bunch of these extensions and they all have the same plugs on the end. So I've cut about 1 foot off the end of one of them and actually wired it into this control box on the positive and negative, so it's connected to this switch. That means if I do ever need to manually turn those lights off in the drawers, I can. So I've used one of the extension leads to run power from the control box around the back of the drawers and then neatly under the wings, so I've got power for my light. Let's give that a quick test. Righto, so now I know that's got power, so I can cut it to length so it's going to fit in the drawer. Now when you're cutting these strip lights, make sure you cut it on these copper terminals. So the bracket needs to sit about here so that as the drawer closes, it presses in that switch and disconnects the circuit. Let's go make this. First step, I used an old angle bracket and cut it down so it would fit in the space. Clean up the edges with a file. Then we've got to mark and drill the hole where the switch is going to go. Start with a pilot hole, then drill it out to size. To mount it to the drawer frame, we're going to use one of the existing holes and then drill out a second one so it doesn't rotate. Start with a pilot hole, then drill it out to size, then use a bigger drill bit to countersink it so we can clear the switch. Now that I've made the bracket, there's one other thing I need to remember, and that's that I need to insulate this metal switch. I had this one laying around, but if you can get your hands on an insulated plastic switch, that's the way to go. So I'm just going to use a rubber grommet in the hole to insulate everything. Now that I've got the grommet in the bracket, we can mark up the position it needs to be in and drill the holes. I'm marking it on the outside so I know where the holes have to go. Then I'm going to drill them out, position the bracket on the inside and mount it up. Now that that bracket is solidly mounted to the drawer frame, the next thing to worry about is the wiring. Now I want to keep this plug here so I can disconnect or connect this light back up in the future. So I'm actually going to cut the wire here, then strip back the insulation. Then I'm going to crimp a ring terminal onto one end and a bullet connector onto the other. That means it's easy to connect up the switch. In the earth wire, I'm adding about 50 millimeters of length just to account for the size of the switch. With the wiring done, it means that I can push this switch through the grommet into position, then connect it all up. I'm adding a nut to the thread on the back, then a washer to the front, then the ring terminal, and I've added some electrical tape for insulation, then another washer, the nut on the front, and tightened it up. Now with the bullet terminal, again, I'm adding a bit of electrical tape, plus I'm going to add some heat shrink onto the barrel of the switch. So when I plug the bullet terminal in, I can heat shrink it and it's all insulated. Finally, I'm going to squeeze this grommet over the plug, pass it through the frame of the drawers, then put the grommet into the metal to protect the wiring. Then it's time to give it a quick test. Now that I'm happy with how that switch is working, I've got to position and mount this light. Now I'm going to use some adhesive backed Velcro just to stick it up underneath the lid of the drawer here. If you want a more secure way to do it, there are plenty of ways out there, so have a think about it. But doing it this way means it's easy to reposition or move if I need to, plus it's easy to take out and unplug. As I said earlier, I use the included extension lead for this project just so I can plug it in and unplug it as I need to. But if you do want to run your own wiring, it's super simple. Have a look at this. So I've got my positive and negative cables here. I've added a fuse in line, plus a switch, and then I'm ready to connect it up to my strip light. The reason I said to cut this strip light on these copper tabs here is that it makes it super easy to solder your wires back on and make it work. First, I've put a little bit of solder on each of the terminals here. Next, I'm just going to put a bit of solder on each of the wires. Now that my wires are tinned and my terminals have solder on them, I can simply touch them together, use the soldering iron to join them up. And you've just got to double check, obviously, that your positive is on the positive, the negative is on the negative. Then add some heat shrink. Finally, I'm adding one big piece of heat shrink just to seal up the end. All right, now I'll give it a quick test. There you go, how good's that? Well, there you go. If you've got a couple of hours and some basic bits and pieces you've probably already got laying around, you can make your drawers that much better. This is a really simple DIY and I recommend it for everyone. Make sure you check out the rest of the channel for more tips, tricks and techniques, whether you want 12-volt DIY projects, camping or fall driving tips, or some cracking camp cooking recipes. Cheers.